The message came before sunrise. Don't look for me, Emily. I've made my choice. Chloe's future. That's your responsibility now. 20 years of marriage shattered in a single sentence. No explanation, no goodbye. Just silence. Cold, final, and cruel. And in that moment, I realized my husband was gone, and my daughter's future had just been thrown into chaos. I'm Emily, 43 years old, a mother, a wife, or at least I thought I was. For most of my adult life, I lived for my family. I worked double shifts at the library to help pay off our modest home. I skipped vacations so David could start his business. I wore the same winter coat for 5 years, convincing myself it was still good enough, while saving every spare dollar for Chloe's college fund. Chloe, my sweet, wide-eyed 12-year-old, was my whole world. Her laughter filled the house like sunlight breaking through a storm. And David, he was supposed to be the anchor, the protector. The man who once held my hand and promised, "No matter what, I'll never let go." But that morning, he let go. Entirely. When the voice message ended, I stood frozen in the kitchen, the phone slipping from my hand. For a moment, I convinced myself it was some cruel joke, a bad dream. But reality arrived swiftly, like the sharp envelope from the bank that slid under my door later that afternoon. Suspicious transaction. College savings account, $75,000. Balance, $0, $75,000. Every overtime hour, every night I skipped dinner, every holiday I worked to cover someone else's shift. That was our daughter's future. And now, it was gone. Tell me, if it were you, how would you react in that moment? Would you scream? Collapse? Call the police? Me? I just sat at the kitchen table staring at the empty numbers, the paper trembling in my hands. But Chloe was calm. Too calm. That night, when I tucked her into bed, she looked up at me with eyes far older than her years. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she whispered words that sent a shiver through me. "Don't worry, Mom. I've already taken care of it." And there it was. A smile. Not the innocent smile of a child, but the knowing curve of someone who had seen more than she should. Something inside me broke. My daughter should have been dreaming of science fairs and slumber parties, not speaking like a strategist in a game of survival. I wanted to press her, to demand answers, but fear held me back. What exactly had Chloe seen? What did she know? The days that followed felt like walking through a haunted home. David's shirt still hung in the closet, his razor still on the sink, but he was gone. And in his absence, shadows crept in. At night, I heard the faint tapping of keys from Chloe's room, the rapid clatter of someone typing far too fast for a school essay. One evening, I walked past her door and saw the glow of her laptop screen reflecting off her face. She quickly shut it when I entered. "Homework," she said, too quickly. But the next morning, when I bent down to pick up a dropped pencil near her desk, I noticed something strange. Taped beneath the wooden surface was a sheet of paper, a hand-drawn map. Arrows pointed between words scrawled in red ink. Account Arrow, Hotel Arrow, Florida. I froze. My daughter had a secret. By now, rumors had started to circle the neighborhood. Brenda, my supervisor at the library, asked casually one morning, "Haven't seen David around? Everything okay?" I smiled weakly. "He's just busy." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Everywhere I turned, I felt the weight of judgment. And worse, the weight of silence. My husband had abandoned me. My daughter carried secrets. And I was left clutching pieces of a life that no longer existed. If you've ever lived through betrayal, you know this silence. It doesn't scream. It doesn't shout. It just suffocates. One night, unable to sleep, I crept into Chloe's room. The soft blue light from her screen illuminated her small frame. My heart ached. She looked so much like the child she still was, and yet her hands moved like those of someone carrying the weight of an entire household. Before I could stop myself, my eyes caught a glimpse of her screen. Emails. Dozens of them. A thread between David and someone named Jessica Miller. My breath caught. Jessica. The woman from David's office. The one with the perfect hair and sharp laugh that always made me uneasy. And there it was. In black and white. Once Emily's out of the picture, everything will belong to us. I staggered back, my hand pressed against my mouth to stifle a cry. They hadn't just stolen money, they had plotted to erase me. I wanted to scream, to wake Chloe, to demand the truth. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Chloe wasn't shocked. She wasn't discovering this for the first time. She had been watching, tracking, collecting. And when she turned in her sleep, murmuring, "He won't win, Mom," I knew. My daughter knew far more than she should. But the real question was, how far was she willing to go? Before I take you deeper into this story, don't forget to subscribe to her Betrayal stories and hit the notification bell. Here, you'll always find tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and the most unexpected turnarounds. Where are you watching from? Leave me a comment below. Who knows? Maybe the next story will echo your own experience. Morning light spilled weakly through the curtains, but inside my chest it felt like midnight. I stood at the sink, scrubbing a cup that was already spotless, my hands trembling. Chloe sat at the table eating her cereal in silence, her gaze fixed on something beyond the kitchen walls. I wanted to ask her about the emails, the map, the strange midnight activities. But how do you look at your 12-year-old daughter and say, "Sweetheart, are you investigating your own father?" Instead, I swallowed the words like poison. By the end of that week, I had called David's phone so many times, I knew the rhythm of his voicemail greeting by heart. "This is David. Leave a message." My messages grew more desperate with each call. "Please, think about Chloe." "David, we can fix this. Just come home. I don't understand how you could do this to us." But the silence after each beep told me everything. He wasn't coming back. The cruel confirmation came not from him, but from the world outside. Susan, my older sister, called one evening. "Emily, I don't want to upset you, but I saw David downtown. He wasn't alone. I already knew the name she was about to say. Jessica Miller." The real dagger came days later when David finally did pick up the phone. His voice was cold, sharp, and unrecognizable. "Stop embarrassing yourself, Emily. You're old news. Jessica makes me feel alive again. You're nothing but a weight I've carried for years." For a moment, the room spun. "David. We built everything together. Chloe's fine. She's tougher than you'll ever be. And if you think you're walking away with anything, think again. The house, the savings, it's mine. You were just along for the ride. Have you ever heard words so sharp they carve straight through your soul? Words that strip you of every illusion, leaving only raw, exposed bone? That was the moment. And if you've ever been told you were useless, let me tell you, you are not alone." That night, I cried silently in the bathroom, gripping a towel to muffle the sobs. When I came out, Chloe was waiting. She didn't say anything, but she placed her small hand on mine and whispered, "He's wrong about you." Then she disappeared into her room. Later, when the house was quiet, I crept back to her door. Through the crack, I saw her again, typing furiously, a notebook open beside her. I shouldn't have looked, but my eyes betrayed me. Scribbled across the page were notes that chilled me to the core. Bank logins, Jessica's hotel reservations, a Florida property deed number. This wasn't the imagination of a child. This was a record, a case file. 2 days later, Miss Evans, Chloe's teacher, stopped me after school pickup. Emily, is everything okay at home? Chloe's different lately. Focused, but guarded. She turned in an essay about betrayal. It was unsettling. To be honest, I forced a smile, the kind mothers wear when they're crumbling inside. She's just adjusting. Things have been complicated. Miss Evans placed a gentle hand on my arm. She's smart, Emily. Smarter than most kids her age. Just make sure she isn't carrying more than she should. Her words echoed long after I drove away. One night, unable to bear the not knowing, I waited until Chloe fell asleep. Her laptop lay half closed on her desk, its screen still glowing faintly. My hands shook as I lifted the lid. Emails, screenshots, GPS logs, and then recordings. I clicked one. David's voice filled the room, angry and low. We just need to get Emily out of the way. She's pathetic. Once the paperwork clears, it's all ours. Jessica's laugh followed. Cold, cruel. She'll never see it coming. Women like her never do. I snapped the laptop shut, my heart pounding. Tears blurred my vision. Not only had my husband betrayed me, he had conspired with his mistress to erase me completely. And my daughter. My little girl had been listening, recording, documenting. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made pancakes, humming softly, but Chloe saw through me. She always did. Mom, she said, pausing with her fork midair. You know, don't you? Her tone wasn't a child's question. It was a soldier's acknowledgement. I set the spatula down. I know enough. But I need to hear it from you. Chloe looked me dead in the eyes. He's not coming back. And Jessica, she's not just after him. She's after us. But don't worry, Mom. I won't let them win. The way she said it, steady and certain, both terrified and comforted me. Days blurred together after that. Each one brought a new sting. David draining another account. Jessica parading around town with her new jewelry. Neighbors whispering behind cupped hands. But Chloe remained steady, like a lighthouse in a storm. One afternoon, I walked into her room to find her staring at a package on her desk. Inside were printed pages, screenshots of bank statements, text conversations, even photographs. Where did you get these? My voice cracked. She simply shrugged. People leave trails when they lie. You just have to follow them. The breaking point came when I received a letter from a lawyer. David had filed paperwork to claim the house. My home. The place where Chloe had taken her first steps, where every photo album of her childhood lived. I clutched the letter to my chest, my knees giving way. Chloe picked it up calmly, scanning it like a detective reviewing evidence. They think they've already won, she murmured. But they don't know what we have. I stared at her, shaken. Chloe, what do you mean? Her lips curved into the faintest smile. You'll see. And in that moment, for the first time since David's betrayal, I felt something stir inside me. Not fear, not despair, hope. Because maybe, just maybe, my daughter wasn't as powerless as she seemed. But what exactly had she planned? The day I held that lawyer's letter in my hands, I realized something fundamental. I was no longer fighting for a marriage. I was fighting for survival. For a roof over my daughter's head. For my own dignity. But Chloe wasn't shaken. She was focused, like a chess player who saw 5 moves ahead. That night, while she was brushing her teeth, I wandered into her room, desperate for answers. On her desk lay a thick spiral notebook, its edges worn from constant use. Against every maternal instinct telling me not to invade her privacy, I opened it. What I found inside made me sit down on the edge of her bed, my hands trembling. Photographs, screenshots, notes, written in a meticulous, almost clinical style. Bank transfers traced from David's accounts to Jessica's, hotel reservations in Miami under fake names, a property deed in Florida, signed not by David, but forged in my name. And most chilling, a printed email where Jessica had applied for a credit card using Chloe's social security number. The blood drained from my face. They weren't just stealing from me, they were exploiting my daughter. Chloe's voice startled me. I was going to show you, Mom. I just needed to be sure. First I turned to her, my throat raw. Chloe, how long have you been doing this? She looked at me evenly. Long enough. He thought I wasn't watching, but I was. We sat together on her bed, the journal open between us like a book of confessions. Sweetheart, you shouldn't have had to carry this alone, I whispered, stroking her hair. I couldn't just sit there and let him destroy us, she said, her voice steady. Someone had to do something, and you were too busy hurting. Her words cut deep. But she wasn't wrong. I had been drowning in grief while my 12-year-old had turned into a strategist, piecing together a web of betrayal. Mom, Chloe continued, flipping to a page with neat arrows and circled names. I've already started. I sent some of this to Jessica's boss. Do you know what happens when an HR department sees evidence of fraud tied to their employee? I shook my head, almost afraid of the answer. They investigate. Quietly. She doesn't even know it yet, but she's already being watched. I stared at her in shock. My little girl had done what I hadn't dared to do, fight back. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. For weeks, I had been the victim, the abandoned wife, the powerless mother. But Chloe's courage ignited something inside me. Why was I letting David dictate the story of my life? Why was I bowing to his cruelty when I still had something stronger? Truth. I promised myself then I would stop crying, I would stop begging, and I would start fighting. The next day, I called David. My voice didn't shake this time. David, I know what you've done. I know about the accounts, the property in Florida, the credit cards in Chloe's name. It ends. Now for a moment, there was silence. Then his cruel laugh filled my ear. You think anyone will believe you? You're pathetic, Emily. Always have been. Jessica and I, we're untouchable. I let him finish. Then I said quietly, you should be more careful. People leave trails, and trails can be followed. This time, it was his silence that lingered before the line went dead. The following week, small tremors began to shake their fortress. Jessica's name disappeared from the company's website. Whispers floated through town about an internal audit. And David? For the first time, he called me, not to taunt, but to rage. What did you do, Emily? They froze my account. I bit back the satisfaction in my voice. Maybe you should ask Jessica. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Chloe grew bolder. She showed me how she had traced David's GPS history from his old phone. She had photos, grainy but clear enough, of him meeting Jessica in a parking lot, exchanging envelopes. Why, Chloe? I asked, struggling between pride and fear. Why go this far? She looked at me with eyes far too old for her age. Because if we don't, he wins. And he doesn't deserve to win. For the first time, I took action myself. I gathered every document Chloe had collected and scheduled a meeting with a lawyer, one who specialized in fraud and family law. As I sat across the polished desk, sliding the thick folder toward him, my hands still trembled. But when the lawyer's brows rose in shock as he flipped through the pages, I knew we had something real. This isn't just adultery, he said firmly. This is criminal. Identity theft, fraud, property forgery. He's left a trail a mile wide. For the first time in months, I felt my spine straighten. That night, Chloe and I sat together at the kitchen table, a quiet solidarity settling between us. I'm sorry, I whispered. Sorry you had to be stronger than a child should ever need to be. She leaned against me. Don't be sorry. Just don't give up now. I promised her I wouldn't. As I tucked her in, Chloe gave me one last piece of information that made my heart stop. Mom, she murmured sleepily, I sent something else too. A package. To the district attorney's office. My breath caught. What did you send? Her lips curved faintly, and then she drifted off to sleep before answering. And there I was, standing in the dark, knowing the storm had only just begun. The morning it all broke loose felt deceptively ordinary. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, birds chirped outside, and Chloe sat at the table calmly spooning yogurt into her bowl. But inside, I could feel it. The air was heavy, electric, like the seconds before a thunderstorm splits the sky. The phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Mrs. Emily Thompson? A clipped voice asked. Yes. This is Christine Adams from Channel 7 News. Would you care to comment on the investigation into Jessica Miller and David Thompson for fraud and identity theft? My breath caught. I'm sorry. What? Public records show a complaint was filed with the district attorney's office last week, accompanied by extensive documentation. Jessica Miller has been placed on administrative leave. Authorities are now looking into her financial dealings with your husband. We'd like your side of the story. I froze, staring at Chloe across the table. She didn't look surprised. She just gave me the smallest, most deliberate nod. Within hours, David was on the phone. His voice, once cruel and dismissive, now cracked with panic. Emily, listen to me. You have to help me. They've frozen everything. Jessica's gone. She disappeared. I don't know where she is. I held the phone tightly, savoring the shift in power. Why would I help you, David? You drained our savings. You forged my name. You stole from our daughter. He groaned, the sound of a man watching his world collapse. I made mistakes, but you're my wife. Don't you understand? Without you, I've got nothing. I let the silence hang before answering. That's exactly what you deserve. News travels fast in a small town. By evening, whispers had become headlines. Local businessman accused of fraud. Employee Jessica Miller under investigation for embezzlement. Neighbors who once looked at me with pity now eyed David with thinly veiled disgust. And at the grocery store, I overheard two women whisper, I heard he stole from his own daughter. Can you imagine? For once, their whispers didn't sting. They soothed. Justice was finally breathing down his neck. But the climax came not through headlines, but face to face. It was a Thursday evening when David showed up at the house unannounced. He looked disheveled, sweat-soaked, his once perfect suit wrinkled and stained. He banged on the door until I opened it. Emily, please, he begged, stepping inside. This is still my house. I need to figure this out. I stood tall, blocking his way. Correction, David. This house? It's mine, and you're trespassing. His eyes widened, fury flashing. You think you can take everything from me? After all I've given you? Given me? I laughed bitterly. You gave me abandonment. Lies. And betrayal. Everything else. I earned from the stairs. Chloe's voice rang out, steady and cold. She's right. And we have proof. David turned, startled. Chloe descended slowly, holding the thick binder of evidence she'd compiled. She dropped it on the coffee table with a thud. Emails, bank statements, recordings, she said, flipping through the pages. I sent copies everywhere. To your boss, to the DA, to the IRS. Even if Mom wanted to save you, she couldn't. His face went pale, the weight of inevitability crashing down. The final twist came when Chloe pulled out a small flash drive. This, she said, her young voice calm, is the recording of you and Jessica planning to erase Mom from the picture. Do you know what conspiracy looks like in a courtroom, Dad? David's legs seemed to buckle. He dropped into the armchair, his head in his hands. Jessica. She set me up. She said she'd handle everything. Chloe's eyes narrowed. And you believed her? You betrayed us for someone who left you the moment things got hard. The sound of sirens in the distance made him jolt upright. His eyes darted wildly toward the door. They're coming for me, he whispered. I folded my arms, my voice steady for the first time in months. You brought this on yourself, David. Actions have consequences. When the police arrived minutes later, he didn't resist. He was too broken, too hollow. They led him out in handcuffs, the neighborhood watching from their windows. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. But I did feel free. That night, Chloe and I sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one. She leaned against me, her small frame finally seeming like that of a child again. It's over, isn't it? I kissed the top of her head. The worst part is, but we still have healing to do. She was quiet for a while before whispering, I'm glad we won. I held her tighter. We didn't just win, Chloe. We survived. And that's stronger than anything he tried to take from us. But even in that peace, one question lingered. Where had Jessica gone? Because villains rarely vanish without leaving one last shadow behind. The night David was taken away, the house felt lighter. For the first time in months, I could breathe without that constant weight pressing against my chest. Still, silence hung in the rooms. Not the suffocating silence of betrayal, but a quiet space waiting to be filled with something new. Chloe curled beside me on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder. Are we safe now? She asked softly. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. Yes, sweetheart. We're safe. He can't hurt us anymore. And as I said the words, I realized I believed them. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Lawyers, investigators, even reporters reached out, each demanding their slice of the story. David was charged not only with fraud, but also with identity theft. Jessica, as it turned out, hadn't vanished entirely. She was under federal investigation, her name blacklisted across the financial sector. Neighbors whispered, but now their whispers carried sympathy, not judgment. At the library, Brenda hugged me tight. You're stronger than you think, Emily. Don't ever forget that I smiled, weary but steady. I won't. If anyone carried herself with unexpected grace, it was Chloe. One afternoon, I found her at the dining table typing furiously on her laptop. Homework? I asked with a teasing smile. She looked up, smirking. Sort of. I'm writing something for school. A guide, actually, about how kids and parents can protect themselves online. I blinked in surprise. Like a project? More like a mission, she replied. No one should ever have to go through what we did. Her resilience both amazed and humbled me. While I had been drowning in heartbreak, she had turned our pain into purpose. Weeks later, I visited David's arraignment hearing. The courtroom buzzed with reporters, the click of cameras echoing off the marble floors. When David entered in his orange jumpsuit shackled at the wrists, he avoided my eyes. He looked smaller somehow, as if betrayal itself had drained the life out of him. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of sadness. This was the man I once loved, the father of my child. But compassion didn't erase accountability. As the charges were read, I whispered to myself, respect isn't given by blood. It's earned through love and kindness. It was a truth I would carry forward. At home, I began making changes. I painted the living room a soft, warm yellow, my favorite color, one I had never chosen before because David thought it was too cheerful. I started attending a support group for women who had endured betrayal and financial abuse. Sitting in a circle of strangers who felt like sisters, I realized I wasn't alone. And every night, Chloe and I shared dinner together at the kitchen table, no longer haunted by empty chairs, but Jessica's shadow lingered. Some nights I still wondered, where was she now? Would she try to crawl back into our lives? Chloe seemed to sense my thoughts. One evening, she said simply, "She doesn't matter anymore, Mom. People like her always destroy themselves in the end." And perhaps she was right. Justice had already begun its course, and we had chosen a different path, one of healing. Looking back, I see the arc of our story clearly: sacrifice, betrayal, the long climb from despair to defiance. I had once believed my worth was tied to keeping a family together, no matter the cost. But I learned that real strength is in knowing when to let go, when to fight for yourself and those who truly stand by you. And Chloe, my brave, brilliant daughter, taught me that even in the darkest times, we are never as powerless as we feel. If you've ever faced betrayal by a spouse, a sibling, even a friend, you know the sting of injustice. You know the weight of silence. But let this story remind you, you are not alone. If it were you, standing where I once stood, how would you have reacted? Would you have fought back? Stayed silent? Or carved a new beginning like we did? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed a similar injustice in your family? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there may need to hear it. Here, on her Betraya Stories, every story is more than entertainment. It's a reminder that no one has to suffer quietly. Together, we speak up for fairness, dignity, and the power to rebuild after devastation. So if this story touched you, leave a message below, whether for yourself, for someone you love, or simply to say, "I understand." And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell, so you never miss another tale of sacrifice, betrayal, and those unforgettable turnarounds. As Chloe and I closed the door on one chapter of our lives, I realized something profound. Betrayal had not broken us. It had revealed us. We weren't victims. We were survivors. And in our survival, we found not just justice, but freedom. Because in the end, respect isn't demanded. It isn't stolen. It isn't owed by marriage vows or blood ties. Respect is earned through love, through kindness, and through the courage to stand tall when the world tries to bring you to your knees.